Welcome to Insightful Leaders. I'm your host, Ryan Stewart, and this is the show where I interview proven leaders in customer insights and CX who share their stories, strategies, and insights to drive meaningful change in your organization. Our guest for today's episode is Virginia Wheway. Virginia is an accomplished and influential data-focused executive with diverse skills and experience across a range of industries such as aviation, mining, manufacturing, government, medical research, and finance. She has experience in developing and implementing enterprise information management, strategies, and data science and analytics strategies in medium to large organizations. Virginia is also formally trained in machine learning and statistics and is an innovative thinker with experience turning ideas into commercial reality. It's really great to have you on the show, Virginia, and I think we can probably jam on machine learning and statistics for hours if we wanted to.
Yep, love that stuff. Yes.
So let me get straight into it. I suspect for large organizations who find they've now got more customer data than they originally thought that they would have, they panic, they feel that panic setting in around how they're going to understand it all. And I guess that probably is derived from if you're not very deliberate at the start with having a strategy around how you're going to collect that data and how you're going to implement it. You can wake up one day and be like, well, all of a sudden I've got all this data and there's no strategy around it. How would what are the first steps that you think about in trying to get on top of a situation like that? Is it something like a dedicated insights department? Is it something more fundamental than that, than actually sitting down and trying to come up with a strategy and wrangle the data first before you think about trying to get anything from the data?
Often I think people would start with, hey, let's try and get all of the data, get all the data warehouse sorted, get it all talking to each other in the right ways, and let's do a lovely, some people want to do a perfect cleanup job, but I start at the other end of how are you actually going to use that data? And even if organizations or leaders don't have an idea of what they want to do with the customer data, I can draw on previous examples from previous organizations about what are the sort of business questions or how would it benefit your organization to know X, Y, Z about your customers. So if I just use a quick example from Koala, where I'm at now, we could have gone down the option of trying to perfect a customer data warehouse, set up, de-identified unique IDs for every customer, make sure every link works. But essentially, I flipped it around and we said, what sort of question at the moment would we like to be able to answer for our business based on customer data? And it was actually the text of all of our tickets and all of our help desk tickets that was of interest to Koala, because they wanted to know, are there FAQs on the website that we've missed? And are there, we think we know our business and why people get in touch with us, but are there just fundamental gaps in our knowledge or assumptions on our customers that we have missed? And so therefore we didn't need to know that Fred rang at 2 p.m. on a Friday about, this mattress delivery to Brisbane. We just needed to know, why was Fred calling? So we were able to save ourselves all of that, quite tiresome work building the data warehouse and doing text analytics on that. And just for the listeners, a really interesting thing that we found out was when we're an online only store, and when we're on sale, we were getting a lot of questions about our 120-night return policy. So Koala has quite a generous, try it for 120 nights, you can return it within that period, no questions asked. What was coming up in our sale period, so Boxing Day sales, cyber sale, was, does that 120-night return policy still hold in sales? Which we go, of course it does. But many other online retailers, and you would probably all know yourselves, when there's a sale, you often know that you cannot send this back or return it or swap it because it's on sale. So that was a really interesting nugget of information that we gleaned only from text data and from also time bounding it within sale, before sale, after sale. And then because of that, we were able to change something as simple as the FAQs on the website, bring that to the top of the sale FAQs, save a bunch of time for our CS people, and also have an important message out there about Koala's return. policy. So that was a long-winded way of answering that question, but essentially it's like, don't start perfecting the warehouse, work out the business questions that the data can help you answer, and you'd be surprised how messy the data can be, and you can still get insights out of it.
Yeah, we had a guest earlier on in the season from Salesforce, and one of her takeaway points was, and I feel like there's a large degree of overlap here, it is, don't bother collecting the data or asking the question if you don't have a good answer or a good explanation for what you're going to do with that information once you've got it, because you're just wasting your own time and the time of the person that you're collecting that information from. This almost extends that idea to, don't bother trying to over engineer and create the perfect data environment if it isn't clear what downstream benefit, commercial benefit, it's going to have to the organization by you performing that action.
Yeah, and even often they'll say, can you just add, X field or Y field, or, a different checkbox for the customer service agents, without them realizing that's actually quite a bit of data engineering work, and with downstream effects on the data, because you've now got to re-engineer things that didn't need to talk to each other previously. And so that if they can't articulate a massive benefit, or not massive, but a significant enough benefit, then we say, no, we don't add that checkbox just for nicety's sake.
And I assume, to answer the question of downstream benefits of, performing an action, whether it be an analysis or engineering the data warehouse, you probably need to answer that question sufficiently a relatively good understanding of the customer journey.
Yes, definitely. And so before we started this piece of work, it was in some very heavy text analytics. We did have a very good customer journey map, but again, it was I would say like a theoretical customer journey map. And there were cases of like, well, what about if someone rings from, very rural, I don't know, New South Wales, and their bridge has been washed out by a flood? Where's that in the customer journey? And so there was many little side paths. So they'd captured the main flow of customer journey, but many side paths that hadn't been captured. And often they're the ones that take up a lot of time and cause a lot of angst because they're so unique. And so what have we had? We had a journey map. We did the work, and we've now re-engineered that map, because we found that it was capturing, I think there was about 20% of possible journeys that weren't being captured. And a lot of those were very, unique journeys, but we've then reconfigured a lot of our drop-down options for customer service agents, and we're now down to sort of less than 5% now are coming in as, we've never heard that before, or we've not dealt with that before.
Yeah, interesting. So it sounds like one of the early initiatives when you got to Koala was to build out that text analytics solution to understand what was driving ticket volumes. How did you think about building that in-house versus trying to buy a solution or get some external solution in?
Mm-hmm. So I guess, we're talking about this. So it was one of the main initiatives, I guess I should say. We had tons of other, data stuff going on, replatforming, etc. But, specific to this conversation about CX and customer data, text analytics was the place we started. And I guess, you can see my grey hair. I've been about 30 years in this industry, so and in many different organizations. So I have trialed a lot of off-the-shelf text analytics software, and apologies for anyone who is a software salesperson for text analytics software, but I found that they weren't as flexible. They were quite rigid. They weren't as flexible. Even just little things like capitalizing spelling mistakes, that they didn't pick them up as well. But I also should layer on that I have a background in machine learning, so I was lucky enough that I could use open source. So I worked in R, the open source language, and I could write my own specific algorithms and code, because I knew I had the experience to do that, and I didn't see the benefit from buying something off the shelf. So that was sort of my journey, coming from experience of testing a lot of software, and even the algorithms I needed were not super complex. So string searching, clustering. So what's it called, like affinity diagrams of people tend to use this word and that word or these phrases together. That was really all I needed, and I found that I could write that myself with some simple open source libraries. And I guess I should say too, we weren't looking for a 95, 91%. So it's a different problem than, say, you were, even with Google predictive text and other other problems where you actually are trying to very accurately predict the next word or predict what's going on in a conversation. We were just looking for themes. So really 80%, if we picked up 80% of the themes, and even better, if we picked up things we didn't realize, then we were fine. So that again was a trade-off, that I didn't need to have the latest and greatest software to do that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think a lot of the framing of the text analytic solutions that you get off the shelf will be very much around classification, right? Trying to classify to a pre-trained model and using some sort of supervised technique to tag text. Whereas the problem, it sounds like you're trying to solve, is much more one of exploration and understanding, right? It's almost like, how can we use a set of technology to understand, broadly speaking, with some degree of certainty, but we're not looking for F1 scores of 95%.
No.
How do we understand?
That didn't even come into it. We didn't even numerically measure how good this analytics was. We literally got, and the output was a series of text. It wasn't even charts and numbers and figures. It was, here's the themes, and here's the themes grouped by, we did it by region, because you can imagine metro customers have a certain experience and expectation of the world. You think, I live in Sydney, I should be able to get my package within 4 hours. Whereas if you live, interestingly, the divide, if you live, say, somewhere on the Central Coast or between Sydney and Newcastle, are you metro or are you regional? And do you have different expectations? Whereas if you're in very rural Hunter Valley, say, which is where I am right now, you know that it can be hit and miss, and you're just thankful for. So we looked at these text insights by region type, and also by the period, so a promo period versus a regular period, etc. And we literally analysed text, not heavy, machine learning algorithm metrics.
Yep.
We didn't look at any of that, and it's very much unsupervised.
Yeah. And I have a natural tendency to. Well, I'm very biased, obviously, but the way that you approach it is exactly the right way to approach it from a technology standpoint, in my opinion. How do you think about the composition of, let's call it, the data engine of an organization? Because that can be a very kind of broad classification of roles, right? You can imagine a world where obviously the people that are doing data infrastructure sit inside this department. There's some leadership that sits inside this department. You could imagine data science sitting inside this department. And then you have areas where it gets a little more fuzzy. For example, in a digital business, where does a customer insights person that's providing insights to the business on the customer experience, where do they sit? Do they sit in the experience team? Do they sit in the data team? Do they sit somewhere else? How do you think about that makeup of org structure?
Yeah, so again, I'll use Koala as an example, but then I'll move towards what I believe is right for other organisations. So Koala's only 5 years old, and for those listeners who aren't sure what Koala is, it started off as the original Bed in a Box brand in Australia. So it's an online-only store, has moved from Bed in a Box to furniture with a sustainability message and sustainability way of making furniture and values. And then I guess, just growing with the number of products that are offered, but still 100% online. So have been going for 5 years, which is quite young. I came into Koala 18 months ago, and it's just quite funny. They wanted to get serious about this data stuff, not knowing what this data stuff is, but hey, we need you to come and get serious about that. And so I'd say for a young, not mature and not a lot of legacy systems, as you can imagine, I made the decision to have anything to do with data in the one team, in my team centrally. So the data engineer sits in our team, whereas in some more mature organizations, it sits with tech because of the legacy systems, or it's a deployed system and then as a natural sit with tech. So data engineers sit with me, the dashboard builders, so they're sort of the BI typical team, they sit in my team. We don't have a customer insights person yet, but any customer insights gets done in my team with the bunch of analysts that we have. Financial, I'm just thinking of all the different parts across the business where product insights, all of that sit in one centralized team. And we did that because we want to have a common way of storing, accessing and serving up data to people in the business, and so we get a common way of doing things around data. But what we then see, perhaps in a couple of years, as Koala grows to be much bigger, and we've also, I'd say, educated or made the business more aware of what data can do, that the analysts will sit in their own, so the customer service will have their own analyst, finance will have their own analyst, the logistics, all of those guys will have their own analyst. But at the moment, I'm sort of doing this with my hands. We're sort of bringing it all in, and we're all one very tight team. We're also replatforming. So when I joined, there were 4 cloud-based warehouses, all with bits and pieces of things in it. So over the last 12 months, it's been a massive effort, but we've replatformed, and we've succeeded in getting one. I don't know if we're allowed to say brand names on this show, but if we're not the ABC or not. But,
go for it.
Yeah, so we've used Snowflake on an AWS as a platform, and some modern ETL tools, which are really brilliant at managing APIs and opening gateways and transforming data in one go. But then I've been in, just say, for example, I was at Boeing for a lot of years. They have analysts in each function, not a central. They have a mathematics data research group, but the analysts are spread over different functions. And Boeing is a very different company to Koala.
Yeah, interesting. And so the analysts that you in this theoretical world, let's fast forward time 2 years, right? And let's say you're on that path and you've executed the dispersion of analysts into the end teams, but I guess they come back together at some regular interval and they all sit in one department. What do you see the roles and responsibilities of those analysts being? Are they going to also be the dashboard builders? Are they just there to kind of interpret and present results back to the business unit that optimizes the operation of that business unit, or are you thinking about it in a different way?
So I'm actually thinking about it in terms of the skills of those people. And as you sort of, an analyst is not an, they're not all just cookie cutter. Whereas some analysts are really brilliant at getting alongside people in the business and drawing out to make sure they're answering the right questions. And I'll use just a quick example. When I was running the Statistics Bureau at the Department of Transport in New South Wales, the analysts in my team were just asked, hey, can you get the number of Sunday, so in Sydney, it's $2.50 all day for a public transport. Can you guys just get the number of $2.50 things on a Sunday? Which we could do that. But then there was someone in my team who was very skilled and just said, hang on, why are you asking that? And so they're the type of analysts that, yes, they can just sit and code and give you, 13, whatever the number was. But they also said, well, why are you doing that? And it turned out that the government was also partnering with the Tourism Council, and are we making a difference? And that was the question they were trying to answer, rather than a fundamental, how many tickets did we sell? So in my team in the early days now, I'm keeping an eye out on who are the people that are really good at drawing those business problems out and getting alongside the problem owner. And then who are the people that, some people are just brilliant at designing dashboards. They've got almost that graphic design and analytics. So who are those people? And then who are the people that just like to code on their own with headphones on and not necessarily have to interact, but they're very good, very precise to feed the machine with the numbers. So rather than designing, you must have this position, that position, I come about it of looking at the skills and how people are showing, what excites them in an analytics role, because you need all of them to be successful.
Interesting. And is the idea that you want to have that skill set in all of the end teams, or are you thinking about one of those particular skill sets in the end teams and then maybe some additional support for those people in a centralized team?
Yeah, so I think possibly definitely an analyst, a number puller outer, and a chart drawer, someone that can draw charts and pull numbers in every team. But that sort of consulting position that I've described they're harder to come by, and it's not everyone's cup of tea. So again, when I've run larger teams, say in the transport department, I ran a larger a team of 50 or 60 at BHP. It was we identified who were those consultants, and they were more a roaming consultant, and they were able to speak the language of the business but also the language of the analytics team, and so they were more of a floating resource. Again, a dashboard designer is quite a specific skill when you're really good at that. So that is generally a floating resource. But I shouldn't say a basic, but someone that's got that fundamental, can convert problems into pulling the numbers, draw a chart. Service people, there would be one of those in every team, in every, I would say, function. But
and thinking about much larger organisations, perhaps like the Boeing that you referenced before, or the New South Wales Transport Department, I assume that as an organisation reaches a certain size, these analyst roles, whereas in a smaller organisation, the analyst role might have several of these skills and set across several of these disciplines. Perhaps they're pulling numbers out and they're also doing dashboards. As you get bigger, you're going to want to specialize those roles, and perhaps you even introduce specializations that you didn't have before. Is there any recommendations you've got for larger organizations of specializations they should consider hiring in the analyst or the insights department, and why?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll use BHP as an example. So when I there's a brand new role at BHP, sort of heading up analytics, and had a team, an org chart of about 50, and at the time they were categorized into data scientists, and I'll explain what each of these meant. So data scientists and data analysts, and that was it. And so a data scientist was if you think, the person with a maths degree who codes, quite techie. The data analysts were more of the consulting, problem drawing out, problem definition type people. So it was quite a narrow view of the world. And then about probably 6 months in, and getting my feet under the desk, I realized we needed so many more specializations. And I'm sure this is a common theme for people. So definitely a data engineer. And I almost think you need to start with data engineers these days, but they're so hard to hire. And all of the big banks and people that pay very well have hoovered a lot of data engineers up. So definitely data engineer. Data viz, we brought in as a specialization. So where there was no data viz team, I think there was 6 or 8 data viz specialists in my team when I left BHP. And that was something that really hadn't been thought about before. There's also some new positions that are becoming more prevalent, and they're called data journalists or data storytellers. And sort of, don't laugh, but they're the people, again, that have that they can write and they can tell a story, but they can apply the analytics layer and they can think like an analyst over the top. So definitely data engineer, definitely viz, because often then you need to do data engineering and viz before you can get really deep on the machine learning and the technical models anyway. And then a data storyteller, which will also help give the team credibility and kudos because you've solved relevant problems and you're able to communicate those problems.
Yeah, I definitely will not be in the laughing category for storytelling. I hear people talk about it all the time. And it's, I was speaking on someone else's podcast recently. It's much easier. It's hard for an entire organization to have empathy, right? As a continuous entity, to have empathy about a particular situation, because an organization is made up of so many individuals. But it's much easier for an individual with an organization to have that empathy, and it's much easier as someone that's presenting data or telling a story to build that empathy within individuals, rather than thinking about how could I build this empathy within an organization. And one of the ways that I find that manifests itself, and one of the ways I think works very well with storytelling, and why storytelling is becoming so popular, it's difficult to present a situation that's happening in a customer experience lens. We're producing this bad outcome for customers, and therefore we're reducing our satisfaction score by X amount. I mean, I understand that logically, but if I can come and say, hey, this is Sally, this is the experience that Sally had, this is how it made Sally feel, this is how it affected Sally's ultimate behavior, it's much easier for me to empathize with Sally. And then I can say, by the way, there's another 10,000 Sallys.
I was about to say, and there's another X thousand, or Sally is 20% of our our current identified customer base. Yeah, exactly. And then so they empathize, and then you go, and by the way, it's not just Sally. There's lots of Sallys out there. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's a powerful tool. I'm glad to hear you say that storytellers or data journalists is a specialization bigger organizations should consider. And even if you're an analyst at a smaller organization, if you can add that skill set to your toolbox, then I think you'll be much better positioned to not only position yourself in the job market, but provide value to the organization.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just a very quick aside. I do speak at a lot of young women in STEM, or young women career opportunities. Most people wouldn't even dream of, well, I'm going to be a mathematician. But I've said, hey, do you know, in the world I work in, do you love graphic design? Do you love art? But are you also interested in why things happen and how the world works? Well, then do I have a career for you? And then say you can still keep your creative interests, but tell a very worthwhile story that's going to make a decision at the same time. So not going in and saying you have to do maths to be involved in insights and data. You can be, you could be on the arts side of the fence, which was unheard of in my day when going through.
Yeah. I can imagine. Thinking about insights and analyst folks, the people that work in those job disciplines, regardless of the speciality rather, they are the quality of the work and I guess ultimately how they're going to be judged is very much tied to the quality of the inputs, right? And there's the old saying in the data world, garbage in, garbage out. If they can't get access to good data, then it really hamstrings their ability to produce something of quality at the other end that has commercial impact at the organization. But often, and as you've talked about with the data engineer, that's not generally someone that would traditionally sit inside an insights or an analyst department and perhaps doesn't even talk to those people. So how do you think what's the best approach for insights people or analysts or perhaps even organizations to ensure that those insights people and analysts have access to the right type of high quality data so they can produce the results that the organization wants them to produce?
I think there's definitely the organization, and a lot of what I do is education when I first come into an organization. So I share the art of the possible, but I also show the maturity of the data journey. And a lot of that then speaks to needing to have data engineers or to be really honest about the state of your data. Don't hire all these brilliant people who can write amazing, non-linear whatever models when they don't have the basic ingredients. So I often use the restaurant example about the data as the raw ingredients. And is your organization someone that's just had a Woolies truck tip all the ingredients on the driveway, or does your organization already have all the ingredients in the pantry to help the analysts? And so also as part of that education is that sometimes it's 80% of the effort in getting an insight or solving a problem is the cleaning up the data, accessing the data, getting the data to talk to each other. So making it really clear the level of effort involved to get the data prepared. But then also if I'm working with analysts in my team, there's ways around communicating, okay, we think we're going to get particularly in Koala, COVID was a very interesting problem. Did we get a boost from lockdown and COVID? Which you could imagine the answer is, yes, being an online furniture company who have, work from home, everyone's, I've got to do something about my office. So they said to me, what percentage benefit did we get from COVID? And so, again, teaching the analysts, you could say 15%, but given the state of the data I was given, it could be between 12 and 18, say. And I just made those numbers up because it's a company secret. But also educating people that I can give you an answer, but depending on the level of what I've been given, it could be within 5%, could be within 2%, within 10%. And also I think I've seen a lot of really good analysts lose faith and leave organizations because they're the ones that get left to clean up all the Excel spreadsheets and so no one wants to do it, but hiring the right people to do that sort of work is what organizations need to realize, and that you'll very quickly demotivate and you're wasting your money paying data scientists and analysts if you expect them to be cleaning up spreadsheets. So that was a bit of a roundabout way of answering, but hopefully a couple of little insights there.
I like that approach. I like that approach of, it's almost like putting the emphasis back on the organization by, you don't just turn around and give them a poor answer. You turn around and say, hey, here's the answer I got for you. Unfortunately, it's in this range and I can't give you a better idea because I don't have the quality of data to give you a more accurate answer. But if I had that quality of data, I would be able to give you a more accurate answer. And I think that's a great way of framing it, because it kind of shifts responsibility back to the organization, right? To say, I don't have the resources.
And even with COVID, because COVID, I think for all of us went on a lot longer than we thought, that, that initial burst in April, March 2020, and now we're still dealing with it. And so also giving them the answer of, if in another, I'll rerun this model in another 2 months and see if we get a tighter answer, see if the answer is still, consistent with what I've just told you as well. So, buying a bit of time is always good as well. It's sort of, I can give you this answer today, but in a month or 2 months, I can give you X better answer, and then let them make the decision too.
Yeah, I like that. So I've left the easiest question till last. I can't imagine you'll have much to say on this topic. I wanted to pick your brain on the single source of truth for an organization, and how you think about what a single source of truth is. Even the anatomy of it, and if you want to get as specific as what sort of system should it sit within, then happy to hear that as well. I'm leaving it deliberately broad because in my experience, single source of truth could mean absolutely anything. So I'll let you take it where you want to take it.
Okay. No, again, I could talk about this all day, but we've got 5 minutes. So I'll use koala as an example. So, and more as an example of what not having a single source of truth can do. So again, when I came in, multiple systems, I got born of a startup, getting very big very quickly and doing really well. And so I was a bit cheeky. So I went into the ELT because I was trying to get some funding to re-platform and say, this is the way we need to go. And I just said to them, hey, so how many mattresses did we sell in August, of X date? And I put up 3 answers for them. And they all thought about it. And I think there was about a 20% gap in the answers, and they all thought about it, and they all had various answers. And I said, well, depending on which report you run from which cloud system, you'll get those 3 different answers. And then that's all I needed to say to then they realised the importance of knowing for Koala and probably other retail. It's like, how much money is coming in the door? How many units are you selling? How many people are you reaching? Not having a single source of truth led to almost, even sometimes in meetings, people would try and one up. It's like, well, my report says this, well, my report says that. Who's going to win? Very distracting, wastes time, etc. So for Koala, we spent a lot of time getting our order. So basically, the cash register data, single source of truth. That was the absolute first thing we tackled in our data warehouse. And so I don't have any specific ideas of which software or which warehouse it has to live in, just a solid, reputable warehouse. So that was a very important single source of truth. But whether or not it was, just say our mattress range, whether or not we sell, 5% king, 30% queen, etc. If it's 5% or 4%, if it's 20% or 19%, that's not, you don't need that gold standard single source of truth for that. You need more relative. So we've also introduced a gold, silver, bronze system with our data. And so gold also, you imagine, is financial data. So if you're being audited, you can't just have sloppy numbers. So for our data, gold, silver, bronze, and even some of the customer examples that I used earlier, they're bronze because we go, don't try and clean it, don't try and merge it. The nuggets you need to get out of it are in there in its current state. So that can be bronze level data, but our ordering and our sales and our units need to be gold standard. And then what we've done is the organisation now only, so we use Tableau. They only go to Tableau. Everyone knows it's updated at 6 a.m. and they're the numbers. They never disagree. The numbers don't disagree. And it's brought a lot of people back into the dashboarding and insights, because another symptom of not having a single source of truth is people are like, well, why do I bother looking at it? Because it's, Gary's is different to mine. And so it's been a really lovely benefit that just focusing on one sort of set of measures has brought all the organisation back to the dashboard table, so to speak.
Can I love that categorization system. I am probably going to borrow it, fair warning.
I'll shoot you. There's a little diagram. I'll shoot it to you about how you make those decisions.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we might include that in the show notes so everyone else can get access as well. Can I drag you down into the weeds though for a little bit, in particular on this topic? I'm assuming from what you've said that in your view is that single source of truth should live in a warehouse. What role do you see something like a customer data platform playing in a kind of modern data tech stack?
So again, I see it as a source of customer data. So there's many ways customers interact with the organization. And I use it. Yeah, sorry, you're talking about customer data platform, not a not a CRM.
Not a CRM, no.
Not a CRM. So
although, yeah, CDP, but like it's a the lines are fuzzy, right?
Yeah. Yep. So I see a CDP, and again, this is just my view and how I've used it, as more of a macro trend identifier. So different behaviors, different clustering, different groups of, a customer who does this and this and this and this is more likely to do Y or Z, or customers who drop off at this point are more likely to be this type of behavior. So I use it more for macro trends and sort of segmenting customers rather than needing to keep an accurate record of every single person that touches anything on our site. I think too, because we're a pure there's no bricks and mortar at Koala. Our entire shop is our website. So we've got very, very detailed tagging of every type of journey and behavior on the site to try and stop people dropping off and encourage them to pursue to a sale.
And that data classification system, that kind of gold, silver, bronze, would that different type of data potentially live in different systems, or would gold, silver, bronze all live inside the data warehouse?
Oh, I'm just trying to think. No, it could live in different systems as long as you knew the pathway to go and get it. But I must be at Koala, we've decided I'd say 90% of our data or our sources are in the one warehouse in Snowflake. But then the way we treat each of those 90%, some of them we treat to gold standard, some of them we just let sit there as bronze standard, and some are silver. So it's what we do with it inside the warehouse is where we apply our gold, silver, bronze. And so that people know if we serve the finance team something for an audit, or, the logistics team a set of orders, they know that it's come from the one place. And so they know it's got a universal way, a treatment put over it. But we're also, I can't pretend that we've completed the gold standard on everything we want to get gold standard, but it's a journey. But it's exciting being somewhere that's willing to invest in doing that and trusting me as a data leader to tell them the priorities.
Awesome. That's been super helpful. I think to wrap things up, we might get onto the rapid fire question round, if that's all right with you.
Sure. Pressure's on.
So I'm going to ask you, it is. I'm going to ask you 5 rapid fire questions about customer insights or data or even data analysis, and also about yourself. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. They're easy questions, I promise.
I was about to say there's no right and wrong, is there? Like I've got performance anxiety. There's no right or wrong.
No right or wrong. No right or wrong. What's the best piece of either data or insights or analysis advice that you have ever received?
The 80-20 rule. So as a young, growing up statistician, trying to, and I think the way we often think, people like us who are trained in these sciences, you try and get everything perfect and correct and mathematically beautiful. But seriously, 80%, you can often get 80% of the answer in 20% of the time and still get the 80% benefit for the organisation or for whoever you're working with. And you can spend 80% of your time trying to polish that last little bit. Meanwhile, people have moved on. So 80-20.
Yeah, 100% agree. What are you most excited about in the world of data or insights or data analysis at the moment?
Gosh, see, I feel like I'm not at the end of my career, but I'm, more mature in my career. So I'm excited to see, young up and comers and see how the field evolves and see jobs that, say when I was at school and, looking through careers that jobs that didn't exist, jobs that don't exist now. in the data world. And I just think only more and more, and I think COVID has sadly has helped people really think about charts and numbers and the decision making that's out there by the good use of data. So seeing what the future is going to be like when I'm less active, I suppose, in the scene. Yeah.
Now, no pressure, but this is definitely my favorite question. What book would you recommend to our audience and why?
Okay. I think I've already done a koala piece on this. Bad Blood, the Theranos story it's so gripping. It's an amazing read. So it's got science, it's got villains, it's got sort of corporate skullduggery, and you read it and you think, no, surely they're not going to get away with this, and they keep. So I actually read that when I was having a break from not a great career experience myself, and it really I couldn't put it down. So Bad Blood. And if you want to look at statistics and data books, I really love the David McCandless stuff. So Information is Beautiful, those sort of more coffee table books, and especially to get family members and kids and people talking about data as well. So he does some really cool stuff.
And you're right, the Bad Blood book, favorite of mine as well. And one of the benefits of reading that book now is there's a real world, there's events that have happened literally in the last 12 months that go beyond where that book takes you, right? So you can finish reading the book and you can get online and go follow how that story has progressed since the end of that book. What's an interesting, fun little fact about you that most people don't know?
So where I'm actually sitting, where I'm sitting in a shack that we built up in the Hunter Valley with recycled materials. So that's my passion. So I can actually use quite a lot of power tools. So that's what people don't tend to. They think I'm just a lady girl that sits on a computer. I can use power tools, and big beefy ones as well. So this is.
That's awesome. All right. And then easiest question. If people want to get in touch with you after listening to this episode, what's the easiest way for them to do that?
Shoot a LinkedIn message. I'm pretty quick with the private messages on LinkedIn. Or if you want to send a request on LinkedIn, just say why and that you heard the podcast. I get a lot of unsolicited requests and I ignore most of them. So please at least say, hi, I'm blah, blah, I listened to this, I'd like to connect. Then I will definitely get back to you.
Amazing. And we'll include a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes. Virginia, thanks for joining us today. That was super insightful. I certainly learned a lot listening, and I'm definitely going to borrow that data categorization advice that you had. Really enjoyed chatting it over, and I think our listeners will too. So thank you.
Thanks for the conversation.